Good to see you again. We've had a lot of fun, haven't we? I mean, you've had a lot of fun, haven't you? Just one wild thing after the other. It's been really, really amazing. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed watching you and being part of it. And the swimming and the film and the video, whatever it was great. So how did we go with our... You've got a great cabin leaders. They lead you through the feedback at night. And so how did you go with that? I've got the topic number 3, how Noah's flood impacts our world. So where have we got a clicker? Here it is here. So are we up? Hopefully we're up. And we are. So that was the first one. So you should be able to say that without me even leaving it up there. For by him were all things created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Things were created by him and for him. That's pretty good. You just need a little bit of polishing, that's all. So let's try the next one. Is it Hannah? Hannah said this yesterday. But anybody else can... Let's say this together. Yeah, go on.
Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal powers, and divine nature have been clearly seen.
Being understood.
Being understood in this world, so that men can be without excuse.
Yeah, being understood from what has been made. Give him a hand. Very good. Okay, there we go. And this is from 2 Peter chapter 3. This was last night's one. The things that you'll do for a chocolate, Daniel. Anyway. Okay, let's. Who would like to say this one? Yes? Let's hear it.
But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens existed, and the earth was formed out of water by water. By these waters also, the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. 2 Peter 3:5-6.
Very good. I could tell he wasn't looking at it, but that's really good. Let's say it together. But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens existed and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also, the world of that time was deluged and destroyed. 2 Peter 3:5-6. Very good. So I just mentioned a few things just before I get into it, because we're going to do Jurassic Park, the true story of Jurassic Park. This will be a lot of fun. So there's a couple of books that you might like to be aware of. Exploring Dinosaurs with Mr. Hill, Guide to Dinosaurs, there too, that are up on the tables that you can have a look at. And they've got a lot of information in it. Plus there's a free brochure about dinosaurs. Did they die out 65 million years ago? And there was a fellow who's a great enthusiast for creation and the gospel, and he badgered me until we finally produced this brochure. And he will go up to people at a fair or something like that where they've got a display, and he'll say, hey, do you think dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago? And they say, yeah, no, don't really know. So he'll say, I'll show you some evidence that they didn't, and he'll go through this brochure with them. And they're quite amazed at it all. So there's that. So that's the main ones for today. And also there's a bit about dinosaurs in the Creation Answers book. There's a whole chapter on dinosaurs, which we're going to deal with. Plus, is anybody going to be starting college or university this year? Is anybody going to do that? It sort of does. There's a book that applies. It says the Creation Survival Guide to graduate with your faith intact. And even at high school, it's a bit of a challenge, and it talks about that. That can be a very helpful book for people. Okay, I think that's about it. And this afternoon at 4:30, we're going to do a virtual field trip. So it'll be here, last about, if you go out in the field it would last for hours, but it'll last about half an hour to 40 minutes here, and it'll be a hands-on thing which will be good. So there we go. So Jurassic Park, the true story, and I brought one of these. I brought this along. When I get up in the night, if it's really dark, I need something to be able to see. And so this is pretty cool, isn't it? It's a torch which we have. It's a light, and you can see where you're going, you can see where the steps are, you can see if there's anything in your way, and that sort of thing. It's a light that shines. You'd all have, you know, at different times you'd have these sorts of things. And that's an illustration of what the Word of God is like. It's like a light that shows us the way ahead. It helps us understand what's there and make sense of it. And so that's what we're going to do with dinosaurs. We're going to use the Word of God as a way of understanding dinosaurs. We've already talked about it a bit, and we use the history that's in the Bible, the 7 C's of history. So we'll go back there. Can anybody say those 7 C's of history? Anybody would like to have a go? It starts with creation. Yeah, right, very good. Everybody gets a chocolate. Creation. Creation what? Corruption. What's yours got? Curse is on your sheet. Creation, curse, catastrophe, confusion, covenant, Christ, and consummation, the end of all things. And we're going to apply that to dinosaurs. I don't know if you know anything about dinosaurs. Do you know much about them? Do you know what this one is? Who knows what this one is? It's got the name on it, plesiosaur. It's not really a dinosaur. It appears in the same movies. What is it?
It's a swimming dinosaur.
A swimming dinosaur. Yeah, that's right. There's other swimming dinosaurs. It's a plesiosaur. It's a marine reptile. What about this one here? Yes, young lady? Pteranodon. It's a flying reptile. This is not really a dinosaur. This other one is not really a dinosaur. It's a plesiosaur. A dinosaur is an animal that lives on the land. And so here's a real dinosaur. T-Rex. Tyrannosaurus Rex. Tyrant. Lizard. Tyranno is a tyrant. Saurus is a lizard. Rex is king, right? Tyrannosaurus Rex. And people say, well, some people say that the scientists just made up dinosaurs. So people wouldn't believe in the Bible. It's just made up. They're not real. Has anybody ever told you that? Have you ever heard that? I've heard people say that. The dinosaurs aren't real. Have you heard them? People say that? Dinosaurs aren't real. But there's evidence for dinosaurs. There's evidence such as, this is some of the evidence. For example, we find the skeletons of dinosaurs, right? We find, what's this? So what are that? What's this thing? Come on, click, click. What's that? The teeth of dinosaurs. And what is this? Why is this not working? What's that? The claw. And what's that? Polite way of saying it? Fossilized dinosaur dung. When you're in a primary school, you can see the boys wanting to say it, but they don't really think they should be saying it. But anyway, it's called a coprolite, and so that's the feces of dinosaurs, the dung of it, and they find it, and scientists will put it under a microscope and look at it, and they can discover what dinosaurs ate from what's in there. Isn't that interesting? There's a bit of a story behind that. But you see, the thing is, you don't dig up these fossils and they don't have a label on it or a little sign which says how old they are. You just dig up the fossils, and then people try to figure out how to make sense of it. And so here's an example of how it works. Here's a paleontologist. He's looking at this dinosaur fossil find, and he says to himself, or he says, in my expert opinion, he says, 200 million years ago, these dinosaurs were fighting just before they died. And this one had hold of that one's tail, and he's going on with the story. Like David Attenborough, going on with an amazing story. And there's the artist drawing a picture of what the paleontologist is saying. The thing is, he didn't see that happen. What he's got is these dead bones, dead fossils in front of him, and he's making up a story about it. Do you get that? We've talked about this a lot, haven't we? About the difference between evidence and the story. what did they actually see? They didn't actually see them fighting. They didn't see one having hold of one of the other's tail. They didn't see that. So it's a story. And so the sort of story you make up depends upon what's in your imagination. And so this is an example of a dinosaur bone. And this guy is like the guy that's working on the evolution. It's the thing you see on TV that's taught in a lot of schools. And this is looking at it through Bible lens. Same evidence, the same evidence. And so this guy will look at it and he'll say it's 1.5 meters long. And this guy will look at it and he'll say it's 1.5 meters long. They get exactly the same answer. Why? Because it's based on observation. It's based on measurement. You get the same answer. And so that's why a creationist will say we agree with everything that evolutionists actually observe. We agree with it because it's observed. But then this guy will say, this is evidence for evolution. And this guy will say, this is evidence for creation. Different conclusions. So do you see how that works? And that's what we've been doing here, learning how to look at things from a different perspective. And I think that's been a lot of fun. I hope it's been a lot of fun. One of my colleagues that lived in the UK said somebody came up to him during a meeting once or after a meeting, and he said he worked in as a mechanic in a garage. And he said the people that he worked with were always teasing him because he was a Christian. And they were also always making fun of him. And they would always be saying, teasing him, you know, like saying, dinosaurs disprove the Bible. You know, the Bible's not true because of dinosaurs. Isn't that amazing? I was talking to a lady in Melbourne some years ago, and she used to teach religious education in the schools. And she said that one of her boys in her class, he was in year 3, so he would have been about 8 years old. He came along and said, my dad said the Bible's not true because it doesn't mention dinosaurs. So dinosaurs can be a big stumbling block for many people. And so we use the Bible as a light. It's a light that gives us information and helps us understand the world. So I'm going to ask you a question about the land plants and the sun. Okay, you ready for it? So what came first, the sun or the land plants? Who thinks the sun was first? Okay, who thinks the land plants were first? So who doesn't know? Who doesn't care? I'm surprised. None of the young men put their hands up. Well, you see, again, this illustrates the way we think in our heads, right? And so the idea is, well, what came first? We hear the sun came first. Remember, there was a swirling mass of gas and dust in the universe. There was no Earth, there was no solar system, just this gas, and it came together under gravity and formed the sun and the planets. So the sun formed first, and the planets, there was nothing alive on the planets. So the sun was first, and then eventually the Earth cooled down, and then life formed in the oceans, and eventually it evolved out onto the land millions of years later. So the sun was first, the land plants came millions of years later. But again, they didn't see it happen. The people that are telling that story were not there. Nobody was taking notes or pictures. So it'd be nice if there was somebody that was there could tell us what happened and when it happened, don't you reckon? Well, there was, wasn't there? God was there, and he saw what happened. Actually, he made it happen. And so where do we find out what he told us? We find it in Genesis chapter 1, and here we've got how God created everything in 6 days. So we ask ourselves, okay, different things on different days. So when did the sun first appear? When was that? When was the sun first appear? Day 4. The sun was on day 4. What about the land plants? When did they first appear? Day 3. Wow. So the order's totally different. Isn't that amazing? And that's why if you just make the days long periods of time, it doesn't really fix anything. Because the order in Genesis is different from the order that people in science tell us. And somebody said to me, but how could the plants survive without the sun? I said, well, it was only one day. And anyway, there was light On day one, God said, let there be light, and there was light, so there was light. So isn't that cool? Eh? And I could go into a dozen of these things and see how it happened. So we look at this and see, we can understand a lot from what God tells us in His Word. So we could sort of say, okay, the sun, that first appeared on day 4, the land plants appeared on day 3. What about the kangaroos? When did the kangaroos first appear on the earth? When was that? Yes? Day 6. But the Bible doesn't mention kangaroos. Why do you think it was day 6? All the land animals. She's on the ball, this lady, isn't she, eh? All the land animals were on day 6. So the kangaroos were on day 6. I don't even have a picture of kangaroos up there. When did the elephants appear? Day 6. They were land animals. What about the dinosaurs? When did the dinosaurs appear? Who said that? What was it? Why day 6? They're land animals. So do you see how that works? Isn't that easy? Land animals appeared on day 6, and so that includes the dinosaurs. And then, so what else appeared on day 6? What else was there? Humans. People appeared on day 6. Isn't that incredible? So God created all the animals that live on the land, and then He said, let us make man in our image to rule over the earth. So He created man to be the ruler, and so He created the man and the woman on day 6. So that means that people and dinosaurs lived at the same time. Is that what that means? It does, doesn't it? You should see what happens in primary school when I say that. Some of the young boys it creates a mental, a brain freeze. People and dinosaurs lived at the same time. What? Isn't that amazing? But that's what the Bible's sort of saying, isn't it? People were created on day 6, all the animals on day 6. People and elephants lived at the same time. People and kangaroos lived at the same time. People and dinosaurs lived at the same time. And this little brochure that I showed about here, where is it? I've got it. It's called Dinosaurs. This one, it's got evidence there. Evidence, actually historical and evidence that people and dinosaurs lived at the same time. Very fascinating, isn't it? So, we read there that about Genesis 1:25, what happened on day 6. God made the wild animals. Actually, I don't like the word wild, because they were not wild in that they were killing one another. They were the ones that were not domestic, the animals that lived in the field. So God created the animals of the field according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was all good. Isn't that cool? So God made it all, and He was very pleased with what He saw. So now I've got another question for you. Some of you did really well on the last question. For those that didn't do too well, here's your chance to redeem yourself. It's to do with Tyrannosaurus Rex. Now have a look at the teeth on this. 15 centimetres long. They're sharp at the ends. There's a whole row of them in the top. A whole row of them in the bottom. Tyrannosaurus Rex. So what do you think? How would this dinosaur originally have been described? What would this dinosaur have been originally? Who thinks originally he would have been a plant eater? Okay, there's quite a few. A plant eater, you sure? Who thinks that originally he would have been, with teeth like that, a meat eater? Who thinks a meat eater? Okay, who thinks he would have been a scavenger, eating dead animals? Yeah? Who thinks he would have been a plant eater and a meat eater, an omnivore? There we go, originally. So the thing is, does the Bible give us any information about what T-Rex ate originally? Would it tell us what T-Rex ate? You wouldn't think so, would you? You don't think so? So let's have a look. Right at the beginning, when God created all the animals, He said, I've given you this for food. And it's in Genesis chapter 1, verse 30. And have a look at this. God says, to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, right? To everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I've given them every green herb for food. So what did He give them originally? Every green herb. He gave them plants originally. So everything ate plants originally. We read that in Genesis chapter 1. So why was that? I mean, T-Rex was a big animal. He would certainly need a lot of protein. Why didn't he say, you know, if you're feeling a little bit faint on it, you know, have a chomp on Adam's leg? Adam and Eve were not scared in the Garden of Eden, scared that they were going to get eaten by a tiger or a dinosaur. So why was that? It was because at the beginning, God looked at his creation and it was very good. There was nothing that killed other animals. There was no fighting. It's a world full of harmony and peace, and things were good. Bit different from the world we live in, isn't it? Hey? A bit different today. And we know that, I showed you this picture before. We had a photographer there at the time. Did I tell you that? No, I was joking at that time. Taking a picture of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, eating the fruit that they were commanded not to eat. And it was, and that's what caused the problem. So we found out a lot. Isn't it amazing how much we find out about the world through just what the Bible tells us about what happened, through the 7 C's of history. So we've looked at creation, we've looked at corruption. When the corruption came in, things changed. The world became, it came under a curse. We live in a broken world today. So what happened to the dinosaurs? Some people say, well, maybe they didn't get on Noah's Ark and they drowned in the flood. Well, we do find examples of dinosaurs that drowned in the flood, but the Bible says that God told Noah to take 2 of every kind of air-breathing, land-dwelling animal on the ark, and it says that he did everything that God said. So who thinks he would have taken dinosaurs on the ark? You reckon he would have? Okay. I wonder how he would have got them on. Have a look at this. How would he get the dinosaurs on the ark? Hey, yes?
He made the ark big.
He made the ark big. I had a young guy, yes? He bought baby ones. Yeah, some people have said he could take eggs on, but there's a problem with taking eggs on. Do you see what the problem is?
God said to take the animals.
Because God said to take the animals, but you wouldn't know what was a boy and what was a girl with the egg. That'd be right? You wouldn't really know. So that's a good one. Take the young ones on. So they do come out of eggs, and even the biggest dinosaur egg is about the size of a football. So even the biggest dinosaur when it hatched was only small, and so they take a while to grow, and so you just take the young ones on. And somebody said, make the ark big. The ark was big, and there's a picture of it. How long was the ark? 140 meters. The Bible actually, depending on which version of the Bible, in the Hebrew it says 300 cubits. So what's the length of a cubit? Can anybody tell me what the length? Yes, sir. The length of a cubit.
47 centimeters.
Yeah, something like that. It's the distance between a finger and the elbow. And it varied. You know, and if you measure yours, some will be, about half a metre is about, of course it's 50 centimetres. But so the cubit, 140 metres, is based upon something just less than half a metre long. And so that's where we get the idea of 140 metres. How many decks did it have? How many levels did it have? Three levels, had a window along the top. And what was the tonnage of the ark? Can anybody remember that? Yes?
1,540 tons.
1,500. Add another naught. 15,000 tons. So it's a big boat. So there we go. And we put that up a few times, 3 decks, and there's the dinosaurs going on. It's a stable design, and there's the air-breathing, land-dwelling animals going on the ark, including the dinosaurs, which is really cool. So the dinosaurs would have gone on the ark. And I haven't got a slide, but there's lots of dinosaurs that are given different names, but they're really the same kind. The Bible says that he's to take 2 of every kind of animal and 7 pairs of some kinds, like the clean animals. And they reckon that, if you separate all the different kinds of dinosaurs, there's not that many, and you could probably get all the different varieties of dinosaurs on, and 2 of every kind, with about 50 dinosaurs. That'd be all that would be needed to get on. So the waters of Noah's flood that came, rose on the earth, the ark came up, it was lifted. This is probably not a good picture, because it's got these monstrous rocks in there, which I think could be a bit of a problem. But anyway, that's where our artist put it, which is interesting. So the waters rose greatly, they covered the entire earth, and everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. And so we find that there's a funny little saying which says, if there really was a worldwide flood, just as the Bible says, what would the evidence be? Have anybody heard that song? You've heard that song, so you've been playing it. If there really was a worldwide flood, just like the Bible says, what would the evidence be? Billions of dead things, buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. That's what you'd find. Billions of dead things, buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. And what do you find? Billions of dead things. They're called fossils, laid down in rock layers, which is sedimentary rocks all over the earth. And here's one. I showed you the picture. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. A tragedy. And there's a little bit before and after that, which makes it more graphic. And so here's an example. I hope it's clicking. There I am. I'm at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Alberta in Canada. And there's a dinosaur foot. Have a look at that. Isn't that incredible? They found that just around near the museum. And you just look at the size of the thing. It's monstrous. Incredible. That's an example, one of the dinosaurs that didn't get on the ark. And we find their bones all over the world. We find them in Australia, for example. I've shown you pictures of some of the remains this is the Great Artesian Basin. And the sediments around Maryborough are the similar sort of timing as these sediments and the Fraser Island and that. But right in the middle there, they just had in the last year or two, they found out near Eromanga, is it Eromanga? They found this amazing find of a dinosaur there. And there it is. And this is where they were excavating it. Now have a look how flat it is. See how flat the surface is? How did it get so flat? The waters of Noah's flood covered the whole of the area. And so it made it flat. And when you drive out there, you're amazed. If you just instead of picturing brown in your imagination as you look at this countryside, if you picture blue, you sort of can picture it being like an ocean. It's so flat. And here they are. That's why they're excavating. That's what these dinosaurs. And this is a cross-section right from Brisbane up through Toowoomba and going up through Romachala, Quilpie and all the way up to Lake Eyre. It's a long way, thousands of kilometres, and you can see the sediments have been cut off. See, they're cut off there, and they're very thick there, they're cut off there, and they're cut off here. So it's been eroded by Noah's flood, and this particular dinosaur was found on the top there. So that's where they found it, and it was given a name because they found that that's the actual thing they found, and this is a replica they made of it. They had to sort of put it all together and hold it in this thing so it all, because otherwise it fell apart. And look at the monstrous size of this bone. And from that one bone, I think they've only found the one bone, but from that they sort of work out how big the thing would have been, and they say that's the biggest dinosaur that's been discovered in Australia. And so they called it Australotitan cooperensis. So it's found in the Cooper Basin of the Cooper River. Australotitan cooperensis. And that's Skull Hucknall and Robin Mackenzie. And they set up a little museum in Eromanga. And she's become in charge of the museum there. And it's the Eromanga Natural History Museum. When they publicised it, they got a picture of it, Australotitan cooperensis. And see the water. I mean, look at the depth of the water. That wouldn't be enough to bury anything. So they just got a little bit of water trickling around. And where this thing was buried in a huge amount of sediment, and they got these trees as if a forest was growing. At the time, during the flood, the water coming along would have carried along lots of vegetation. It would have been ripped up. It wouldn't have been just sitting there on the side. It's very interesting. So that's the trees. So it's interesting to look at the way the people who found this and who are portraying it, they've got in their mind what it looked like, how it was. And so they always picture the past being exactly the same as we would see it today. Whereas the Bible says there was this global flood in which everything was destroyed, and including and there's lots of vegetation out there which provides gas and coal and that, and the energy that we use. Just north of there, so we're here, this is Eromanga, but going on north a couple of 100 kilometres near Winton, and out from Winton, there's a rough road which goes to Lark Quarry. It used to be a quarry. Has anybody been to Lark Quarry? What did you think of it?
It was really cool.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
I didn't realize it was so big until I did.
You didn't realise it was so big. And somebody else, who else went there? What did you think of it? Thought it was cool. What did they say to you? What did they say, that footprints? What did they say?
They were running from something.
The dinosaurs were running from something. And did they say what they were running from? There was little footprints, and there was medium-sized footprints, and there was big footprints. And so they were I'm just making a joke, they're the Goldilocks dinosaurs, right? The little ones, and the medium ones, and the big ones. And so they said, well, you see the footprints and you try to make up a story about it. And so they said that the big dinosaur came in and he's starting to chase the other dinosaurs in order to catch them and eat them. That was the story. Is that what they said to you? You're not sure? So long ago, eh? Anyway, so that's the Lark Quarry. You go out there and you walk in this area that's covered over. It used to be a quarry. And they had to cover it over so that the footprints would be preserved. Otherwise, they just erode away and there'd be nothing left. And so you can't walk on it. You go on. Was it like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you walk on it and you look down and you can see the footprints there. And so they come up with that story. So there's one guy from the university. He did some X-ray analysis of the footprints. And this is his analysis of it. And he came to the conclusion that this is not a dinosaur footprint. It is a dinosaur footprint, but it's not a dinosaur footprint. It's just the toe prints of it. It's standing on its toes. So, did they say that? It was running. They said it was running. Maybe it was dancing. You could make that up. But the guy from the university, he sort of suggested that it was because the dinosaur was actually being supported by water and he was standing on his toes. And his guy, Anthony Romilio, at the University of Queensland, he did his PhD in this, and so this is his interpretation as to what happened. And I think, well, that's amazing, because that means there was a lot of water there, and these dinosaurs were trying to escape the water, and they're standing on their toes, these little ones, because it wasn't deep enough. And you know, there's a lot of places around the world, similar situation. There's one place in Spain where the dinosaurs were they were standing with their claws, were scratching in the surface as they were being carried along by the water. Isn't that cool? And so the evidence that we see, it's like we put that light on and it gives us insights into what's happening when we understand that there was a global flood. Now, a lady that likes dinosaurs is a lady by the name of Mary Schweitzer. And so she was in a laboratory where they brought lots of dinosaur bones in the United States. And the head of the laboratory was a guy by the name of Jack Horner, which is an interesting name, isn't it? I think I'd change my name if my name was Jack Horner. Little Jack Horner sat in the corner, you know that one. Anyway, but he's evidently a very good paleontologist. So she worked with him, and one time there was a dinosaur bone came in, a T-Rex bone, and it had been broken in order to get it fitted on the helicopter. They broke it and when she had the bone, it smelt really off. And so she had sort of looked at it and it was broken. She could see the inside of the middle part of the bone, and she thought, what is this? So she took a sample and looked at it under the microscope. And she discovered that it actually had red blood cells in the bone. And so this is a picture. This has appeared in a Science magazine. We republished it in Creation magazine, 1997. So it was a long time ago that she discovered this. And she became famous because no one had ever looked inside a dinosaur bone to see if there was anything there. They just assumed it would be all petrified. Because the bones are 70 million years old, 70 million. So you wouldn't expect to find anything in there. And so that's what she said. She said, when she looked at it under the microscope, she said, it's exactly like looking at a piece of modern bone. She said, but of course I couldn't believe it. She's looking at it and she can't believe it. She said, I said to the lab technician, the bones, after all, are 65 million years old. And so she said, the world is young after all. No, she didn't say that. Because she's got a worldview in her head. And the worldview says the world is old. Nobody measured it, but they just assume it's old. They assume the 70 million years is true. So she said, how could blood cells survive that long? So they're not, the evidence is there for a young Earth, but she is not looking at that as a young Earth. She's looking at how to explain it in an old Earth. And that's the way it goes. People use their worldview to explain the evidence. And there's a lot of discussion been on that. There's been more stuff found, lots more amazing soft blood cells and soft tissue and that on dinosaurs. And there's a real debate. Creationists have picked this up and are using it as evidence that the world is young. But you see, the evidence doesn't prove it. If you don't think the world is young, you just sort of say, oh no, that's because something else happened, I don't know exactly what it is, but it can't be right. So you just dismiss it. See, and that's the way worldviews work. So then we've left these dinosaurs. Oh, that's right. They're on Noah's Ark, aren't they? That right? The dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. The waters have come up, and now the waters have gone down. Remember, Noah was on the Ark. He was letting out the rain. It was the Ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, and it's solid. And then what happened was, he was looking out at the ocean, and eventually, after 2.5 months, which is a long time, the mountains, some mountains in the distance became visible, and then the water still went down, and he's trying to figure out, is it dry or isn't it dry? Can we get out? I'm tired of this lockdown. So he wanted to get out the Ark and everybody in it, and eventually he let out a raven, do you remember that? And it didn't come back. But that's probably because ravens can survive on all the dead things that were floating around in the water. But then he let out a dove a week later, and it came back. And then he let out the dove again a week later after that, and it came back with an olive leaf in its mouth. And then he let it out again a week after that, and it didn't come back. And so that's when Noah realised that the earth had dried out, the water had gone down, and so they got off the Ark. And so our artist has drawn a picture of it here, of them getting off the Ark. So there were 8 people, 2, 4, 6, 8 people get off, the dot lions and all the different animals, and these are giraffes, aren't they? These are dinosaurs and kangaroos, and they all got off the Ark. And there's a rainbow. What's the rainbow? What's the significance of the rainbow? Yes? God promised what?
That he wouldn't do a flood again.
That's right. God said to Noah, he said, I'm never ever going to destroy the world by flood again. And he said, and this is the sign. When you see this in the sky, that will remind you of my promise. And he never has. So the dinosaurs came off the Ark, and so that means we should see evidence of dinosaurs. But people did see them, but they never called them dinosaurs. You know what they called them? Dragons. And so this guy, Sir Richard Owen, he invented the term dinosaur. He was at a museum in England, and he invented the term dinosaur. And he's thinking that these things look like terrible lizards, terrible saw lizards, terrible lizards. And so the story is, dinosaurs of history are actually the dragons of legend. And so we find a lot of evidence of dinosaurs and dragons. Flag of Wales has got a dragon on it. And there are lots of stories come from Wales about people encountering these dragons and them causing trouble to people who are looking after sheep and animals. As a matter of fact, in Canberra, what is it? Where is it? I can't think of where it is. But anyway, in this temple, in Southeast Asia. It's got all these animals. You can see that's a monkey, and there's different animals that are carved up the side of the temple. Has anybody been here by any chance? Nobody has. We published this in the magazine. It's on the back cover, and a lot of people thought this was so great. And so a lot of people who subscribe to the magazine have travelled to this temple, and they sent us back up the photographs of it. So here, if you look at this place here, you can see there's an animal, and that's what it looks like up close there. And Angkor saw a dinosaur, Cambodia. See, so what's it look like? It looks like a stegosaurus. Is that what it looks like? A stegosaurus. And so how did they know what a stegosaurus looked like? So what happened to the dinosaurs? You know, and so a lot of people think that it was because they were hunted down. A lot of animals, there's been a lot of animals that have gone extinct, hasn't there, in the last 100 years. There's a dodo bird, and there's a lot of other animals which are endangered, really critically endangered, and governments have introduced laws to try to protect them. The tigers and the various animals in Southeast Asia, their populations have decreased, and so they would have gone extinct too, unless something was done. And so maybe the dinosaurs were hunted by people because to protect their villages. And the other thing is that maybe they're still alive. We're not sure if this is true or not, but it's possible. It's possible. This is an extinct fish. It's called a coelacanth, and it was only known as a fossil. It was thought to be extinct for 60 million years. And then there was a lady in South Africa who discovered one in the fish market. The fishermen had caught it near New London, and they brought it in and they're selling it at the market. And this is not it, but this is a picture of the sort of fish that it is, a fish. And they used to say, look, it's got these sort of fins on these legs, right? And so this fish is evolving out of the ocean and it's growing legs and it's going to walk on the land. But then when they discovered these things alive and photographed them, it's got these little stubs, and they use the stubs as a way of keeping their fins, giving a good control on the fins. So maybe the dinosaurs are like that. CMI is not so sure, but it's a possibility. So the 7 C's of history. We can understand dinosaurs from the history in the Bible. When they were made, why they are fierce, why we find their fossils everywhere. And they remind us about the gospel in a way, because dinosaurs are beautifully made, and they got incredible design, the way their skeletons hang together and the way they could move. We can understand that from the fossils. And we can understand the consequence of sin and death. That dinosaurs speak about that. And that points to the fact that we need atonement, and that's what Jesus did on the cross. By his blood, he paid the price of our sin so that we can be forgiven, and so there will be a new heaven and a new earth. So, I don't think I've told you the story about a guy called Michael. He wrote us a letter, and he said that, I encountered evolution in my youth. Most people do encounter evolution. And he says it was a big stumbling block to my belief in the Bible during my search for God. So he was searching for God, and he sort of thought that he couldn't start with the Bible because he knew that wasn't true, because that's what, evolution and that. He said, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Saviour at 47, and I'm grateful to CMI who opened my mind. And so I've mentioned some of the resources. One of the big ones is the website. You know the name of that, creation.com, and so you'll have no problem. It's got a very good search box, creation.com. There's an email news system that comes out, which I've spoken to some people here who find it very helpful. It gives a good summary of what's happened in the last couple of weeks, what's coming up, and that sort of thing. And so it's an easy way to keep up to speed. And so I'd encourage you to connect with that. And I don't know, some of these were given out yesterday. Did everybody get one of these? You just fill it out with your email address and stick it in that blue box, which will be cool. And then the magazine. If you get the magazine, that's good. If you don't, it's easy to get. Twist your mum and dad's arm, or maybe you could pay for it yourself. And it's very, it really is very encouraging, and you don't come across this information in many different places. Guide for Dinosaurs, I mentioned that. Dinosaurs by Design. And then there's this one up the back, Dragons, Died Dragons, which has got amazing evidence for it. And so we've sorted out our dinosaurs, and we end up with Psalm 119 verse 105, which says, "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light to my path." That's good, isn't it, eh? Your word is a lamp for my feet, so I don't stub my toe. My wife got up in the night and it was dark, and she stubbed her toe on the bed leg, and it's been sore for weeks. So we need something to protect our feet and a light to my path. So thank you very much for that. So we might open it up to see if there are any questions. I haven't got a question box. There maybe weren't any in the box. Are there any questions? Yes, up the back.
So, since they found blood cells in the dinosaur bone, how long did blood cells last?
Well, blood cells wouldn't last very long. They've not only found blood cells, they've found soft tissue, they've found collagen, they've found DNA in dinosaur blood cells. And so 1,000 years, a couple of thousand years, would be a sort of a bit of a limit to these things. Yeah? Yes?
Do they, once they find the blood cells, can they keep that or will it still go?
Can they what that?
Can they keep the blood cells?
Keep them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they'd still be around. I don't know where they'd be stored. But there's a lot of creationists now who are into this and collecting dinosaur fossils and doing research on it and publishing on it, which is really cool. Here's a question. What is your favourite Bible passage? Oh, I've got a lot of favourite Bible passages, but 1 John, I think it's chapter 3, it says something like, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God." And it says, how great the Father's love for us that we should be called sons of God. It means children of God, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are. We are children of God. So he has adopted us into his family. Jesus was the Son of God, and he's our big brother. And I think that's really good. My favourite Bible verse. Okay, why is the sun slowly moving away from the earth, and same with the moon? As the Earth rotates around, as the Moon goes around in its orbit, it's gradually changing its speed, and the calculations are indicating that the Moon is slowly moving away. Over a couple of thousand years, it doesn't make much difference, but if you're talking about millions of years, billions of years, you're talking about huge distances. And so, what will happen because of it? Well, really, we're not going to go for millions of years on this earth. There's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. And so I think the moon and the sun are doing just fine, and they will do just fine because God put them there for us, for his creation, to provide the light during the day and the light during the night. And so I don't think there's anything to be fearful of about in the time span that we're going to be around here as humans. Anyway, okay, any other questions? We can finish whenever you like, but, there I go on. Yes?
Would the moon moving away affect the tides?
Would the moon going away affect the tides? It's small, it's not large enough to really be able to make a big effect on it. But the tides, the moon and the tides are really amazing, because the moon is just the right distance that the tides are not monstrous. And it's not too far away that the tides are really tiny, and it's going at a good numbers of times to go around the earth once a day, round about once a day. And so the tides coming in and going out, they keep the ocean water stirred up. If there was no moon, the oceans would tend to go stagnant, and life would not go as well in the stagnant oceans. And so it's the moon, and the moon is the only satellite in our solar system of any planet that's about, it's about exactly the same size as the sun. And you can have a total eclipse of the sun where the moon is about exactly the same size and covers it you know, the way we look at it. And from that we can discover about what's in the outer parts of the sun, which we wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And so there's a lot of amazing design features with the moon. Anyway, that's a short answer to a long question. No, other way around. Yes?
You know how asteroids go so fast? How do they get that much speed?
Asteroids go so fast, how do they get that much speed? The speed of these things is often affected by gravity, so as they come in towards the sun, they can be dragged in by gravity. That can make them cause that effect. And it depends if the asteroid comes within our solar system, that's within the speed of this thing within our solar system, or it comes outside of our solar system and is brought in, so that can have the effect of gravity, you know, over long distances that pull it in. Yes?
What do you say about crocodiles being dinosaurs?
Crocodiles being dinosaurs, they are very similar to dinosaurs, but there's a difference in the way their legs are that distinguishes between dinosaurs and crocodiles. Crocodiles are a lizard and their legs go out sideways like that, so you see their legs go out and down like that. And so, whereas a dinosaur is more like a horse, its legs go straight out like that. And so that's the difference between them.
Not dinosaurs?
Crocodiles are not dinosaurs, but they're similar, very similar in their appearance. Okay, is that enough? Is everybody finished? Yes?
Is there any dinosaurs left?
Any dinosaurs that are alive today? We don't know of any that are alive. There's been reports of them, but they're very hard to pin down, and so there's nothing absolutely for sure, yes?
Would you think that it's possible for dinosaurs to be living in the ocean? Like there's rumors about Loch Ness Monster.
Oh yes, those are plesiosaurs. I've had people come up to me after meetings and say that they saw these things. They were out in a fishing boat and saw them. And there's been other reports around. But again, it's very difficult to tie it down to real solid evidence, you know.
Even at the bottom of the ocean?
Hey?
Even at the bottom of the
At the bottom of the ocean? Well, the bottom of the ocean's a long way down, and you do find all sorts of fossils down there. I don't know if you'd find plesiosaur fossils down there, I'm not sure. Yes?
Do you reckon the Loch Ness would be one?
If it's a real thing, it's possible. There's a lot of sort of trickery that goes with the Loch Ness Monster and photographic tricks and things. So yeah, again, it's not solid evidence that you can really tie into. It's possible, but we're not sort of pinning much hope on that. Yeah.
Concerning people like Richard Dawkins and other people who you said that if you show them evidence for creation, they'll say, oh, it just looks like it's created, but it's actually not. How would you evangelize to people like that?
How would you evangelize to people like that? I used to think that it was a matter of providing evidence and arguments which are going to be overwhelming. And that's when I started with Creation Ministries. But I've come to realise that if somebody's made up their mind they don't want to believe, then no amount of evidence is going to change their mind. So I tend to back away now from that, and I will ask them about their life and just generally try to be friends with them. And I'll be open about where I'm coming from, but I won't try to argue or change their mind. You know, I think I've seen people who have had those engagements and who have changed their mind. And Ray Comfort has videos about people who say they're atheists, and he'll talk to them. It doesn't take very long, and they change their mind to become an agnostic. But if people have got their mind set up, I think you've got to realise that going down that route, I find, is not helpful. Yes?
Is there any fossil evidence of dinosaurs and humans coexisting?
There has been some put forward of dinosaur footprints and human footprints, but that is, you know, I thought your debate, you know, you had a debate, when was it, the first night, and about dogs and cats, what's better about dogs or cats, and there was a number of questions which came up, and I thought that was really interesting because one person had to take one side and the other person had to take the other side, and no matter what they thought, they had to argue a certain position. And so what was your question? It's related to that.
Is there evidence in the fossils of humans?
Yeah, so So there is evidence which has been put forward, and there's other people who've come up and argued that it's not right. And so because it's not open and shut case, we as creationists, creation ministries, we tend not to use that evidence because it's a bit ambivalent. But I think there is evidence that, you know, dinosaurs and the humans lived together, not with the same bones, but certainly footprints is something that indicates that. Yes?
Sometimes people say that all of the continents or countries have started together. Is that true, or was that separated at the Tower of Babel, or is it not true?
Yeah. So the question was the idea that the continents were once together. And that's one of the questions that comes up a lot, and it's in the Answers book. And the Answers book, I think there's a special, the price on the back's $14, but I think it's a special for anybody who's a student for $5 at this camp. So if you need one, if you can. But the Answers book talks about continental drift, and the idea is there's a bit of a debate between creationist geologists about this, and there's some creationist geologists who support the idea that the continents have moved apart, and they've got like evidence and explanations for how that happened, and so I think that's quite reasonable. I think when they say the continents moved apart, I think it's connected with the waters of Noah's flood coming up, and then there was movements in the crust where the ocean basin started to sink and the crust started to crack and break and move, and so the ocean basin started to sink and the waters ran off. So that's continental. That's continental drift, plate tectonics they call it. And other creationists are not as enthused about it, but I don't think they've written it out. So we tend to agree with continental drift. And there's an article in the Answers book about that. Okay, I think it's probably gone long enough. Up the back there?
Yeah, old mates say the meteorite destroyed the dinosaurs.
That's right.
Why do they think that so much, that one meteorite can destroy dinosaurs on the whole planet?
Well, these theories, you've got to realise that these theories, the ones that are accepted are the ones that people like.
Yeah.
Right? And so they're published, and the idea that meteorites destroyed the dinosaurs, it's very graphic. You've got this fireball coming in from space, smashing into the earth, and so it's very popular. But there are other ideas as well that are put forward. But basically, scientists these days, it's been around for a long time, they're sort of saying that the meteorite impact happened at the wrong time to kill the dinosaurs. So there's a bit of skepticism out there now about the meteorite actually killing the dinosaurs. And it wasn't, from a biblical point of view, it wasn't that way. Because the dinosaurs, the fossils that we find, they're the ones that were buried in the flood. So they were not destroyed by a meteorite. We find them overwhelmed and buried in the flood. And the secularists, they see all these dinosaurs suddenly buried as fossils, and then there are no more dinosaurs. Why not? And one of the ideas was that there was a plant was evolving, and it became less fibrous, and the dinosaurs used to eat this plant, and they all died of constipation. There are about 60 different theories for how these dinosaurs died. And the asteroid impact is the most, how would you say, exciting, makes good movies, but it tends not to be believed these days. So I just want to encourage you, thank you very much for the opportunity. 4:30 we're doing that field trip, but I'll see you tomorrow so we continue on then. Bless you.